When I think of how we have to imagine rivers otherwise, away from the pure resource model, I recognize that we can reverse the direction of shifting baseline syndrome. We can make it lifting baseline syndrome. We can make our rivers touchable, then swimmable, then drinkable again. Drinkable rivers. Imagine that.
Welcome to the Mongabay Newscast. I'm your co-host, Mike DiGirolamo.
And I'm your co-host, Rachel Donald.
Bringing you weekly conversations with experts, authors, scientists, and activists working on the front lines of conservation, shining a light on some of the most pressing issues facing our planet and holding people in power to account. This podcast is edited on Gadigal land. Today on the newscast, we speak with Robert Macfarlane, who is well known as an award-winning nature writer, environmental activist, and many more creative endeavors. He joins us to talk about his latest read, Is a River Alive?, which is said to ask and answer this question. In this conversation with co-host Rachel Donald, Macfarlane details the context in which he asks this question and its thesis, which takes readers to the front lines of some of the most significant battles to save waterways: the cloud forests of Ecuador, southern India, and northeast Quebec. He unpacks not just the importance of rivers for humans, but also their right to exist as living organisms, and how this recognition intersects with policy and law, such as rights of nature laws, which are being implemented around the globe. Afterward, Rachel and I reflect on the history of the environmental movement in the United States, which some might say was emboldened by the need to combat pollution in the Cuyahoga River, which used to catch fire in the 20th century. Macfarlane's book, and I believe this conversation, shed important light on the fragility, beauty, and necessity of Earth's waterways.
Robert, welcome to Mongabay's podcast. It is a delight to speak with you this morning.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, we are absolutely thrilled to be joined by you. You are one of the foremost nature and landscape writers in the UK and worldwide, I would say, having read your book. And I have to say, I actually hadn't read any of your other work before I read Is a River Alive? And then I read it and I was like, yes, I understand why this is what he is held up as. I mean, it is extraordinary what you do with language.
Oh, thank you. That's very, very nice to hear. I will just say, Mongabay, long-term reader, long-term fan, very, very engaged and admiring of the work you do. I reciprocally am very happy to be in conversation.
Oh, well, thank you very much for that. So, with this book, you decided to look at water, bodies of water, how we understand bodies of water, how we fail to understand bodies of water. And I suppose, because you sort of vaguely at the beginning hinted this story, it would be good to understand what brought you to talk about water for this book.
Well, there are many, many stories. A book has a watershed, like a river has a watershed. It rises in many sources. One is simply the situation of rivers in England. And we told a young and terrible story about water, flowing fresh water in England and Wales, which was that it should be privatized. And that story took hold in 1989, converted water to liquid asset, deterritorialized it, made it something that private equity firms could invest in, rake dividends from. All of the spiritual connections, the life-giving force, the particularities of rivers were lost and have been lost in that process. So I live in a country surrounded by rivers that are in a grievous state. So if the work of a writer is to find old stories and tell them for new times, or to find new stories and tell them for future times, that was what I set out to do. This is the profit motive. The liquid asset story is a young story. We have to remember that.
Thank you for sort of laying out like that. I love people talking about narratives or imaginaries to kind of reveal almost like this matrix of language that we live in that adds a layer to the world that isn't necessarily there. And sometimes it's really wonderful, like the way that stories can bring alive the spirits that run through. I mean, if we think spirits run through us and we are 80% water, then they should run through rivers as well. But
absolutely,
the flip side of that is when they get seen as, I mean, I love the term that you use throughout, service provider. That all of this life and all of these interconnections, all of these nodes of possibility could be reduced down into what they provide humans, and not even all humans, certain humans, in order to maximize their returns from it. I mean, it is actually mind-boggling stupid.
It's wild. It's
Isn't
so
it?
wild. And rivers have flowed in the south of England, let's say, for 10 to 12,000 years, right? Since the ice left. That is coeval with the period of human flourishing. The beginning of the Holocene was in many ways the beginning of the Hydrocene, the river scene, let's say, in the north of Europe. So our cities are built on water. Of course they are. There's a wonderful line Henry David Thoreau says. He says, a river town is a winged town. I think he means the river gives it motion, connects it outwards to the wider world. Yes, all our towns and cities are winged towns because we understood that life and water flowed together. Human life and river life flowed together. So this forgetting that has beset power, if we want to call it that, structures of control, the deep codes of the imagination as it's run in a kind of late capital phase, they're all young. They're really young. And we have to daylight, to use another wonderful river term, daylight older, richer, more relational ways of feeling and thinking and behaving towards rivers.
Hey, and thanks for tuning in to listen to the first few minutes of this interview. There's a lot more to it. So if you want to hear the full conversation, find the Mongabay newscast wherever you get your podcasts from and click subscribe. You can also get each new episode straight to your inbox by subscribing to Mongabay's weekly newsletter at mongabay.com. If you really want to help support us, you can also donate to us at patreon.com/Mongabay. Don't forget to leave a review. And thank you, as always, for listening.